So again, on your assessment, it's no different from your driving test. Yeah, you're going to be expected to do it by the book and following all the correct procedures and stuff. So a bit like on your driving test, you mirror blind spot. This is just another kind of check like that you need to do just for the assessment, really. So cold start, if you remember correctly. Before you use it, check that it's got fuel and oil, which obviously it has because we've just done it. Check the side casing, nuts and bolts are secure. I have actually had that on an assessment before where it's come off while they've been using it. Again, anything if you've had these undone, do those up. Checking that the 10 safety features are all there and present, and you might want to just kind of click on your chain brake just to check that that's actually operational. And you're just kind of looking at the chain condition just to making sure it's actually as fit for purpose. The idea is obviously if you're on a job site and there's a load of different saws, someone's just left the saw down there, just to do these checks before you start using it, because obviously you might just be picking up a saw that's no good for use. Yeah. So those are the 4 pre-start checks. Then you move into the post-start. So then you move into the actual starting procedure, which obviously when it's cold is on the floor. So on these it's choke down. On your Husqvarna, pump it, choke up, and then you've got the same as this one, haven't you? So okay. Chain brake on. Okay, the way I like to remember this is an acronym called BOCO, B-O-C-O. Okay, so the first one is brake. Rev it up to about 75%, then activate the chain brake, and it should obviously stop the chain. So the next one is oils. You need to check that the oil is actually lubricating. You should see a line coming out onto there. Next one is chain creep. So this is if your chain tension's not correct. It could the chain could start creeping around the bar. So the way I do it is just hold it on my leg like this, so I can see the full face of the bar there. Rev it up, see if it moves. And then the last one is turn it off. So don't just stand there with your saw running, waiting for the next instruction off the assessor. Turn the saw off, because that completes the checks. Okay. Right. So we're going to talk about the basic fell or the standard fell first. I'm going to use it on this tree here. So when I use a standard fell is when either the tree is completely upright or it's slightly leaning in the direction that you want it to go. Okay, so that's a situation, yeah. And in order to do it, I need to put a gob cut in, or face cut, or sink cut, or notch. Obviously, it's called different things. I generally try and call it the gob cut. What do you call it? Have you heard of it before? Or?
Just face cut.
Face cut, yeah. So I'll probably just keep naturally referring to it as a gob cut, but I mean the same thing, yeah. So I need to put that in the direction, obviously, that I want it to fall. The cut itself, I'm going to start with an angle cut. Some places they'll tell you to cut that in at about 45 degrees. But I tend to go for a 60-degree angle. So if you just come around here a second. So with a 60-degree angle, what I want to be doing is I want to be leaning up against a tree like this. And if I use a 60-degree angle, I can pretty much, makes it much easier for me to look down the cut that I've just made. If I do it at a 45, I'm going to have to be much more over here. Does that make sense? there's also an increased risk of like cutting too deep into the tree. So if you come at a nice kind of steep angle like that, you tend to end up with a better sized gob. Yeah, and for the training purposes, it's going to work out a lot better. So I'm going to aim it exactly. I'm not kind of guessing where I want it. I want it to go pretty much exactly where I want it to fall. Yeah, so I need to pick something out in the canopies that's going to be a good target. I don't want to just be like that direction or that direction. I want to pick out, pretty much pinpoint a spot where I want it to fall. So looking at this tree here, okay, there's a good chance it's going to hang up in this, you see this branch? You see this quite a chunky branch? Yep. Yeah, so there's a good chance that it's going to hang up in that. So what I'm going to try and do is I'm going to try and move it as far away from that branch as I can without going straight into that other tree. Okay. Yeah. So I want to try and just get it on the tip so that if it does hang up, I've got still some manoeuvrability just to get it around it. Okay. So I'm pretty much, if I follow that line down, I'm pretty much going to aim it with not this tree here, but the one next to it. So there's 3 trees in a row. Yeah. The third one, I'm going to aim it. So the way that you actually aim it is by using this line on your saws. So that is a 90-degree angle to the bar. Okay, so if I'm looking down that line, that's pretty much telling me that I'm in the right place. Yeah. If you're putting it over here or over there, obviously it's going to be in the wrong direction. So what I like to do first, well, what you need to do first is you need to prepare the escape routes. Okay, so if I've now decided that that tree is my target, 108, everything 180 degrees, we'll call that 12 o'clock of the tree. Okay, so at 3 o'clock, it's 3 o'clock and it's 6 o'clock, 3 o'clock and 9 o'clock, I need to draw some lines. Okay, and then that means that everything that in that direction is off limits once it becomes once the felling cuts have gone in. Okay, so this is what you want to be doing on your assessments. You don't want to waste any time. You don't want to try and save any time by not preparing your escape routes properly. Yeah, you want to get them all set out nice. So once I put those felling cuts in, this is off limits. There's another area that's also off limits, and it's when it comes off at 45 degrees from each side. So I'm going to draw another 45 there, and another 45 here. Okay, so anything within those side 45 degrees you need to clear. Anything that you can trip over. If there's trees in the way like this, obviously this tree's been retained and you can't always completely clear your escape routes. But if there's something that you really can't get rid of, like this tree, then it's probably a good idea just to let your assessor know that there's a tree there, basically. And you say, I'm aware of it, so I'm going to try and favour going out this because it's a bit more clearer. Or, you know, there might be a big log that you can't physically move with two of you. So you might just be as well just to point it out and say, this is in my escape route, I'm going to try and go that way if I can. But if I do have to go this way, I'll go carefully and step over it. Anything that's like small, whippy, if there's loads of little branches on the side of this that could take your eye out on the way back, you need to clear those off as well. Okay, so that's prepared. The reason why we don't go back is for a few reasons. So trees can barber chair. Do you know what that means? Yeah, have you seen it? I've seen it, yeah. Yeah, there is actually a tree down there I can show you. Yeah. It's got a barber chair on it. Yeah, have you seen that? Yeah, so it's when it starts to split up the back, yeah, and that back can then come up and crash down. It normally crashes down in this area here. You can also, I've seen a video off a training course where something like pinged off over there, so it might have been a bit of deadwood either on the tree or on a neighbouring tree. Anyway, because it's falling that way, what it did is it like sprung it back. And this woman, she walked back and she was going straight out the back escape route like this, and the bit of deadwood came through the air and went, smashed her straight in the head. Luckily, the visor went down and protected her face. But that's another reason why we just don't go straight back. So as it does start to fall, I just want to not run out there, just back out slowly, just keeping an eye on it. Yeah? Okay. So, when it comes to the actual face cut, the gob cut, I want to be about 20 to 25% in the depth of the tree, okay? I also want to make it so it's not too far off the ground. Like, we don't want stumps hanging around like this high, yeah? If this was all being sold as a forestry product, so it could be wood chip or firewood, obviously probably wood chip if it's pine, they want to get as much as they can through the chipper, yeah? So if you're leaving, you know, a foot at the bottom of it, that's good wood at the bottom that is being wasted. So the aim of the game is to try and get it as low to the ground as we can without blunting your saw in the process, okay? So the way that I usually decide it on trees this big, so I've just put my saw clear around it properly first. If I just put my saw on ground level like that, so it's sat down, and just move it into the tree like that. So I'm looking at this top edge that's touching it. I'm going to move that up about an inch, okay, to about here. Yeah? I'm going to mark it, and that's where I'm going to start with my 60-degree angle cut. Now, when I'm holding the saw, if you look at the way I'm holding the saw, if I hold it on the top, like that, can you see it's quite tilted, isn't it? Yeah. If I hold it more on the corner, right on the corner there, it naturally stays a bit more level. Do you see that? Naturally stays a bit more balanced. So when I'm cutting, I'm going to try and cut it there, and I'm going to let the saw do the work. I'm just going to try and bring it down flat like that. One thing that would be a common theme throughout the course is if you keep trying to lever it like this, which often you see people do using the saw, you're going to be much more likely to cut through your hinges or mess up your back cuts or mess up your gob cuts. So for the purpose, and on bigger trees it's unavoidable a lot of the time, but on these stuff where it's way smaller than the bar, we should just be able to keep kind of moving in direct lines like that, almost as if they were on, you know, like a set of rails, like a circular saw, when, you know, when they're on the track. That's how we kind of want to move the saw. So I'm holding it on the corner there, bringing it down nice and flat. By bringing it down flat and stopping when it's level, that will allow me to then look straight down that gap, the curve where I've just cut, and I can see then, if I hold this flat, as I probably told you before, I've called it the beer bottle, yeah? So you imagine you've got a beer bottle on the end of the bar. Yeah, so if I hold it like that, it's going to fall off. Hold it like that, it's going to fall off. So when you're lining those two cuts up, you need to try and make sure that that is dead level. Yeah. What's the better problem to have, do you think? Cutting too little or too much on that second cut? Cutting above or below where your angle cuts finish?
Below.
Okay. Two different answers. So it's taken above, yeah? That's better, because if you cut above, it's really easy for you to just adjust it and take it down a little bit more. If you go below, too far low, then you've got to then come down again on your angle cut and down again on your flat cut, and sometimes you can end up with a much bigger gob. Right. So when I do this, I'm going to do it with a good problem, yeah, which is taking it in smaller pieces so that you can adjust it again afterwards, yeah? Right. cool. And obviously once you've started the saw, you can hot start it like this. So I'm just leaning up against the tree. If you stand down there, about there, I'm leaning up against the tree. I'm not kneeling down. I'm leaning up, but I'm taking the strain out of my legs by leaning up against the tree. It also allows me to stand straight behind it like this and look down that line. Okay, so because I've taken too little out, it opens it up quite nicely and I can see exactly what I need to do. So if you're going to make a mistake and you're not going to line them up perfectly, make sure you go a little bit less than what you need to. Yeah. Okay, so what you want to end up with afterwards is a nice level cut, okay? Because if this isn't level and your back cut isn't level, then quite often you can end up with a gob cut like this and a back cut like this. So they just don't line up very well, yeah? What I'm going to do next is mark out my hinge. Does everyone understand the concept of a hinge and what it does? Yeah. Okay, so it obviously control, this is the directional cut, but the hinge will actually control it down that. If you cut the hinge out, it's just going to fall where it wants to go, where the weight is, yeah? So it's very important, and this is going to be like a safety critical thing on your assessment, that you don't cut your hinge out. And what we want is a nice 10% strip along the whole diameter of the stem. So what I'm going to do now is I'm actually just going to mark that out on both sides, and then when I come around that side to that final cut, I'll know to stop when I get to that mark. Okay? I could do with one more mark, and it's just to make sure that I get the level right. So with the level, I think the camera's gone. Walkies. Yeah. Don't do that. You can do it with the arrows. Yeah. You know, there's a Oh, yeah. You can move it around with that, and once you find me, then double tap me again. Yeah. So what you can do with the angled cut, sorry, the back cut, is you just want to mark out where the height is, okay? So height wise, we want to be either level with or up to an inch above the bottom of the gob cut, or the bottom of the face cut. So here, yeah, want to be either level with it or up to an inch higher. If you go below it, then it could turn into more of a step cut, and then it could more easily fall off the back of the stump. And then if you go high, the risk of going too much higher is it's a bit deceiving sometimes where your hinge is. Okay, so if I went, you know, too high like here, I might think that I've still got that until the gob. But actually, by then you've probably already cut through your hinge, because the hinge works from that bottom corner all the way up. So if you draw an imaginary line, it's from that bottom corner all the way up there. So people could, if they go too high, they can mistakenly think they've got more space than they actually have, and end up cutting through the hinge quite easily. Yeah. So I'm going to go, in an ideal world, it would just be somewhere between an inch and level with, because obviously if you go for level with, you're more likely to go low, and if you go an inch, you're more likely to go high. Yeah, so if you just try and aim for somewhere in the middle, just over 10 mil, that's about ideal. Yeah, so just put your saws in the actual gob cut, just draw an imaginary line back. You can mark it and then check it. Yeah, so if you stand back, you can just kind of line it up. So I'm happy with that. So the next thing to think about is, if I just get a nice straight stick here, I'm just going to lay that there. It's just on the edge of my line there anyway, and that one there. They're both kind of heading in the same direction as the gob cut. Okay, I want to be positioned with the middle of my legs over that stick. Okay, when I put the back cut in, I'm starting at that mark, but again, my saw is already parallel to the direction of the gob. Yep. I'm also going to use my felling lever. I'm just going to lay it down like that, ready. When I have put that back cut in, directly behind the tree is a big danger zone. And the idea is, if they sometimes get hung up, they can jump back off the stump and break your ankle. Yeah. So if I need to go around to check my hinge cut, I need to walk around that felling lever. Give yourself a wide berth every time. And again, this goes back to the driving test thing. You need to be doing these things to show the assessor that you know what you're doing. Yeah. When I bring this back cut in, with my legs positioned over here still, yeah, I'm going to start. I'm not going to go like this, that levering motion I told you about earlier. Don't want that, it's not good. What I'm going to do is transfer my weight to my right leg, and I'm just going to move it flat, in a flat line to my left. Okay, and that way I know that when I get to the mark, yeah, I know that if I've got everything in position before, that when I get to the mark on this side, it's going to be on the mark on that side as well. Yeah. Okay, so once it's cut, the temptation can sometimes be to keep cutting, because you think, oh no, it's not come crashing down yet. So what often people do is they just keep cutting, but that's a mistake, because you'll end up cutting too much hinge. So the first thing you do, back out slowly out your escape route like I have. Get your saw and put it there. Yeah? Okay. So come round the back now. Okay, so what I'm going to do now, just put my felling lever in. It's obviously leaning that way because it started to go a little bit, and I'm going to just lift with a nice straight back. And what you'll find is these pines, they're like Velcro at the top. Yeah, they won't come apart very easily. Yeah, so they take a bit of lever in. You can have your ears off, because it's better to hear any cracks and snaps and things like that to see what's going on up there. But if you're going to look up like this, it's better to just put your visor down like that, okay? Okay, so it's now a hung up tree. So this is part of your assessment, okay? So you're going to have to fell a minimum of 2 trees and a maximum of 4. So you need to pass, in an ideal world, got heartburn. Too much sausage rolls this morning, that's what it was. In an ideal world, I would probably try and get your first one hung up, because if you don't manage to get your second one hung up, then you're going to have to do a third, yeah? So, in this situation, I need to obviously get it down safely, yeah? I'm not allowed to stand directly behind it, so I'm going to put that there, again for the reason of it coming back off a stump, and for obvious reasons, you're not allowed to go directly underneath it. Once it is hung up, we're obviously going to have to stand to the side of it like this. But as long as I'm not going underneath it, I'm okay. Again, I'm going to have to work near the back of it when I'm rolling it, but we don't want to be putting our feet right behind it, okay? So how do you think I'm going to get that down now with the tools that I've got?
We should cut through the hinge one side.
One side? Yeah. Okay, it's called a hinge reduction. So I need to decide which way I want it to roll at this point. So what do we think looking at that?
Probably roll it right, away from the tree.
Right is, the problem is it's stuck where I said it, you know, it was going to get stuck on those 2 branches. So ideally I do need to roll it right first off them, but then I could end up rolling it too far right into that other tree. Yeah. So I'm hoping that if I just try and roll it left, it will just start freeing itself up from that from those 2 branches. Does that make sense? So in order for me to roll it to the left, I need to leave the left-hand side of the hinge intact. So I cut out the right-hand side. And if I wanted to roll it to the right, I'll do the opposite. So what you're leaving, if you imagine the hinge that goes all the way along, yeah, if that was my hinge, so I'm going to cut 80% of it out on the right-hand side, and I'm going to leave that, okay? And that acts as a pivot point for me to roll it, okay? The way that I do it, you have to take 80%, but if you went for the full 80% in one go, you're just going to end up getting the saw trapped, which is not good, obviously. So if I wanted to cut this side out, what I would do is I would stand here, again in that straddling position of that stick, and I'm just taking passes. The best way I can describe it is you're taking 5% at a time. Yeah, 1, 2, 3, 4, until you get all the way up to 80%. You've got to be careful not to cut beyond 80%, but I'm just taking passes, so I'm coming from the back of the back cut straight out the front of the face cut. If I go round the other side, it's the opposite. I'm going from the face, inside the face cut, straight out the back. And I'm always using this bottom corner of the saw. So if you find yourself in a position where you're getting a lot of kickback, and you kind of, say for example here, and cutting with the tip of your saw out the front, it's because you're cutting in the wrong direction. And it's not going to be controlled, because it's just going to be trying to kick back. Okay, so just get your heads down a little bit and see what I'm doing here. See it start to move a bit. sometimes these levers can work really well, and sometimes they just won't stick in. So while I've still got a bit of hinge there and this tree's still fairly solid, I'm just going to do myself a favour and put a slit in the side of this, yeah, which will allow me just to put the flat part of the lever in, so that if it doesn't start hooking and I've got a problem, I can just slip that in, yeah. I wouldn't want to do this, say if it was going to get used for like milled timber, for example, if it was going to a furniture place. This obviously isn't. If it's going for firewood or for the wood chipper, there's no problems doing it, yeah. But if you wanted to preserve the wood, you wouldn't do this. Okay. Yep, see how it slots in there quite nicely. So what I'm going to do now is push it around. Okay, so I always want to push, I never want to pull in case I fall back on myself. Yeah, so and you'll be sick of this. Okay, so it's past that branch now, which is good. When it starts to go, I just let go. Forget about the lever, just let go. Okay, so I'm going to imagine if I just kept rolling that, it's going to come down. Heartburn. But there's another step, okay, so sometimes you can't, another few steps actually, but sometimes no matter how much you roll it, it just never comes down, okay? And I could also go back the other way now. I could try and wiggle it down back and forth, see if that works. But sometimes it's just not coming down. You need to move it back, okay? So once we've finished the hinge reduction, we need to look at the hinge removal, okay? So this is a slightly different way of cutting to the hinge reduction. So with the hinge reduction, you can see I was just going flat, yeah? And I've left a nice 20% at the end of that. With the hinge removal, what I'm doing is I'm cutting about like slices of toast. The objective is to get it off that stump, okay? If I went flat here, there's a good chance it's just going to trap my saw. So now I need to do angled cuts, but mixing up the angles a little bit, like I'm taking little slices of toast out and doing that until it's completely done. Positioning wise, it can feel a little bit awkward to find the right position, but you've just got to try and find somewhere where you're not directly behind it and you're not really looking down the bar, so you're out of the kickback zone. So for me, for here, because I've managed to roll that all the way over, it's quite a nice open position for me to cut that off. And this is the ideal position that you want. Okay, so I now need to grab a nice stick. Just need to make sure it's alive, or it was before it was felled anyway. So it's got enough strength and integrity in it to do the job. Some other things worth mentioning, because this is part of the questions with a hung up tree, is that what are you and what are you not allowed to do with it, okay? So you're not allowed to climb on it, obviously. You're not allowed to fell the tree that it's caught up in. So the one over there, I'm not allowed to go and fell that. I'm not allowed to fell another tree on top of it. So for example, this one, I'm not allowed to put it on top of it in the hope that it's going to try and bring them both down together. You're not obviously allowed to go behind it, go under it. You're not allowed to leave it, yeah? So if I didn't have my winch in the van, let's say, I couldn't just leave this here and say I'll bring it back tomorrow without at least doing something like putting some barrier tape around it. So I'd need to barrier tape it and then probably tell Darren that there's a dodgy tree in the woods, be careful with letting your dogs in, yeah? So at least then it's protected. Okay, so when I'm poling it out, what I want to try and do is, well, first of all, I'm going to try and move it away from that stump. I stick that forward, so the more forward you can get that, the better. So if you're kind of going like this, you're not going to move it that much. You need that as forward as you can, and then you just lift it and move it back. So when it starts to go, you just let go of that pole. In a way, it actually even helps you because it keeps it off the ground. Yeah? You don't try and get the pole out, you just let go of it, same as a lever. And that's it. As easy as that.
Yeah.
I mean, it's hard. It is hard work trying to pole it back, because sometimes you can move it back like beyond where Charlie is, and it's still not come down. So if that was happening, it'd be a case of you want to try and do a bit of rolling, because what you'll find is that they're caught on the tiniest little snags. So you just got to roll it one way and it will come off that. Then you roll it the other way and then you do a bit of poling back, and eventually they will come down. Yeah. I'll just show you how to sned it first. So the site specification here for the timber is just 2.5 saws. Okay, so it's not being used for anything in particular. So just measure the full length of your bar twice, and then do it halfway. Okay, and that's a site spec. And when you're processing it, what the best thing to do is to mark it out as you go down, right? So this next step is called snedding, or we're just removing the branches effectively. Some hazards associated with this is obviously there's an increased risk of kickback with the saw. There's potential, say for example, if this was a broadleaf tree and the branches are going a bit higgledy-piggledy, it could be the bit that you're cutting off could be supporting it. Does that make sense? So if that is the case, then it could roll onto you if you cut it off. Obviously, when I'm going down, there's going to be trip hazards as I cut it off, and another thing is like spring back in the branches. So I don't know if you've ever done a tension and compression cut. You may probably do this on the willow and stuff when you're clearing the ponds. It's really heavily under tension and compression, and it's almost bending. And when you try and cut it, it springs back at you. Yeah, so there's an increased risk of that as well. The correct way for snedding is I can walk up and down this piece of timber on that with my saw on that side of the tree without my chain brake on. Yeah, because there's a tree between us. So when we want to try and do this, and what you want to learn when we're doing this is try and do it as efficiently as you possible. We don't want to go racing around, but you want a nice, efficient workflow to it. So the correct kind of workflow with your saw, I'm just going to kneel down for the demonstration. So you start on this side with your chain brake off, and then you move it around on the top. Okay, and you're kind of using, you can use your leg and you can use the tree itself just to support the weight of the saw, so you're not kind of lugging it around too much. You go flat across the top, and when you get to that stage you just flip the saw around, you take that off and you can come down. Okay, what you're trying to do the whole time is keep the body of the saw as close to this log as you can. And then from there you can push forward, bring it round, move it back on that side, then step forward. So in the ideal world you could do the whole thing without even, you know, taking your hand off the, well, putting your chain brake on. Sometimes you can't do that. You might need to stop and move something out of your way, in which case you stick the chain brake on straight away. As soon as you take your hand off the saw, you put your chain brake on, move the bits you need to do, and then you can carry on. Yeah, if you're taking steps on this side, you need to put your chain brake on. If you're taking steps with your saw on that side, you can walk without it on. Is that clear? I'll show you. You want to do the underside? You do a sweep. Okay. So you see, I was marking it on the way down, but anything that was kind of in my way, I was putting my chain brake on. I was just chucking it on the other side, because then if I keep chucking it on the other side, first of all, it takes it out of my way, and secondly, at the end when I go to tidy up, it's pretty much all on one side. So all I have to do is kind of keep bundling it together and then shoving it on the pile. Yeah? Yep. So I'll just go down and cross cut those bits. Another point to make is, if, say for example, this was laid on the floor, it might be a bit tricky. It might be a bit tricky to, in fact you can see here, look. So where I've missed is obviously where it was on the underside of it. It's obviously when I've cut the end off, it's rolled over a bit. So can you now see that all down that side is bits that I still need to cut off? Yeah. Okay, so it's easier for me to do that while the log's still in one piece. Because if it wasn't, let's say it hadn't rolled or on its own in the right position, just come back down this end and you can move it. Yeah? So I'm positioning that exactly where I want it now. I want it there. And the reason I want it there is so I can go down it without putting my chain brake on again. Yeah. Does that make sense? Yeah. So I'm going to go down it, I'm going to clean those stubs off, and I'm going to do cross cut on the way back down. Yeah. So at this point, I literally just need to stack it up. But what are the reasons why I've taken nice, see I've kind of scraped along the bark there, haven't I? Why do I do that?
Make it like smooth.
Yeah. So I want a nice flush cut. It's not like pruning cuts where you want to take it to the branch collar. I want to cut the branch collar off because they're going to stack a lot better. They're going to in much neater piles. Whoever stacked that last didn't do a good job, but they're going to stack better. Less chance of causing injury. Sometimes they have to get winched out of woods like this. If you've got big pegs sticking out of them, they're going to get caught in all the trees, make a mess, dragging in on the floor, and obviously the end result is they're probably going to go for a wood chipper. So obviously if you've got big gnarly bits sticking out, they're not going to go through the chipper as well. Yeah. Okay, so at this point now we just get it tidied up.